Amen.
All right, so 2 Samuel 15, starting in 13. And a messenger came to David, saying, the hearts of the men of Israel have gone after Absalom. Then David said to all his servants who were with him in Jerusalem, arise and let us flee, or else there will be no escape for us from Absalom. So go quickly, lest he overtake us, quickly and bring down ruin on us, and strike the city with the edge of the sword. And the king's servants said to the king, behold, your servants are ready to do whatever my lord the king decides. So the king went out, and all his household after him. And the king left 10 concubines to keep the house. And the king went out, and all the people after him. And they halted at the last house. And all his servants passed by him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the 600 Gittites, who had followed him from Gath, passed on before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, why do you also go with us? Go back and stay with the king, for you are a foreigner and also an exile from your home. You came only yesterday, and shall I today make you wander about with us, since I go I know not where? Go back and take your brothers with you, and may the Lord show steadfast love and faithfulness to you. But Ittai answered the king, as the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever the Lord the king shall be, whether for death or for life, there also will be your servant. And David said to Ittai, go then, pass on. So Ittai the Gittite passed on with all his men, and all the little ones who were with him. And all the land wept aloud as the people passed by, and the king crossed the river Kidron, and all the people passed on toward the wilderness. And Abiathar came up, and behold, Zadok came also with all the Levites, bearing the ark of the covenant. And they sat down the ark of the covenant until the people had all passed out of the city. Then the king said to Zadok, carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see both it and his dwelling place. But if he says, I have no pleasure in you, behold, I am here. Let him do to me what seems good to him. The king also said to Zadok the priest, are you not a seer? Go back to the city in peace with your 2 sons, Ahimaaz, your son, and Jonathan, the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait at the fords of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me. So Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. Okay, we're going to stop there, I think. It's going to be plenty. And there's plenty more story where that comes from. So. All right, so just to get us back to a running start into 13, Absalom had basically manipulated a lot of people and schmoozed them and that kind of stuff. And as the verse 12 had said, and while Absalom was offering the sacrifices, he said, for Ahithophel fell, the Gilonite, and David's counselor from the city of Gil. And the conspiracy grew strong, and the people of Absalom kept increasing. So his followers kept increasing. So that's where we're at. So David hears from a messenger, the hearts of men of Israel have gone after Absalom.
It sounds like a soap opera or a coup.
It does. It sounds like both, right? It sounds like both with it. So David's response is kind of interesting. We'll get about what the message was in a moment here, but what's David's response to this?
He's out of there.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Did you notice the us's in this? I find that interesting. All the us's here. Let us flee, or else there will be no escape for us, lest he overtake us. And you see all that? I guess that's kind of where you see David's real heart here. He is worried about his people. That's what makes him a great king, I guess, right? Good leaders will always think about others first, as opposed to what's right for them or for themselves. I mean, he could have easily said, you guys stay here, I'll be back. You know? Could have done that, right?
I think the interesting thing here is if you look back at his decision to do what he did here, and you go back to Absalom killing Amnon, was it?
Yeah, or Abner.
When he kills, so
Yeah,
Absalom
killed his brother.
kills his brother, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the way that David reacts, and all through that, you know, not disciplining and you know that whole situation, and it's almost like from the beginning, David is afraid of Absalom.
Right.
You know, whether Absalom intimidates him or whatever, it's just the way that he deals with Absalom is that there's no discipline there at all, even though he's king.
Right.
And then here we see the situation where Absalom, you know, he starts a revolt, and then immediately, rather than David saying he's gonna fight this revolt because he's the king, no, he just gets up and says, "I'm out of here."
He's
You know,
afraid, or he doesn't want to confront it, or he
Yeah.
doesn't want to,
Or I
or he hopes
wonder-
it'll just go away.
I wonder, is it guilt?
could be,
Yeah.
You know, it's that he knew he did not do right
right,
with what he did with his son
right,
from the very beginning, all the way back to Bathsheba.
right,
Yeah.
Right? And he's got this guilt built up. So I think oftentimes that's the way we react is there's this, we react based on our guilt here.
Well, you know, I agree with that, but I wonder if the guilt is turned over to, what do you call it? You might hold something over your head, blackmail or,
Yeah.
what's the word I'm looking for, but anyway, not embezzlement, but that type of thing where I wonder if Absalom had the skeleton in Dave's closet type thing. And not that he didn't want it to get out necessarily, but because of all that stuff, Absalom being the manipulator I see he is,
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt that he would have gone and said, you know about what happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
6 months ago or whatever.
Yeah, I heard about Bathsheba, by the way. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Those type of, I can see him manipulating David.
Well, it certainly is. Absalom seems to have the track record of being able to
Exactly.
manipulate. I'm sure he can manipulate the king, and he has. We've seen that
Right.
already.
Yeah.
That he's manipulating him here. Interesting. Should have had thought. Now I lost
One of the
thought.
things that I was reading through when this was going through, and I missed a couple of subtleties just in the past reading of this, but I got confused here when David first. I may be jumping ahead there, Howard, but where he says go back to the king. The first group where he said, what was it?
Go back and stay with the
19?
king. Yeah.
Yeah, it says that the king said to
Itaiah.
Itaiah, "Why are you also going with us? Return and remain with the king. You're a foreigner, etc., etc." I understand everything except the part of go back to the king.
Well, I
Is he-
said at first puzzled on that, but I think Gittite was a foreigner. So maybe he meant go back to his home.
Oh, not back into Jerusalem.
Ittai rather. Ittai the Gittite. Gittite. It maybe Gittite. The Gittite, maybe that means he was a Gittite. And
Right.
He was just there. He'd only been there a day or two, right? Or a week or whatever.
To go back
Right,
to the
he's only
Gittites'
been a
king.
day, yeah,
Only been there a day.
yeah.
But yet he.
So he's not even talking about the king of Gittite.
That's kind of what I
Okay.
yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. But yet he chose to go with them anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess so. Yeah.
And the other interesting thing here is that, you know, David decides when he leaves, he's taking the Ark of the Covenant with him, right?
Yeah.
And so, but then he has a second thought of saying, no, bring it back.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
whether that's, and I guess it's for the people. You know, he's thinking about the people. He's going to be exiled, is the thought, but he's not going to exile the people from
God.
from the presence of God, right?
Right.
And which is kind of interesting. And then he basically lays it in God's hands and says, if he wants me to be the king, then
Right.
you know, we'll leave there. But I'm not gonna penalize the people for
Sure.
for this. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, I was going through the same thing because I was trying to figure out what the order of events were. Did Zadok pull out the ark on his own, or did he do it on the orders of the king? Which theories. You don't do anything on your own, but still,
Right.
you
Yeah,
know,
I don't know, I mean,
Yeah, we don't know. That's kind of what I assumed, that maybe they were going through what they normally would do.
exactly. We're going to pick up and go camping, so everybody can take the ark with you.
Right.
You know, and then the other thing is when he does challenge it, a lot of battles were fought over the ark. I'm wondering if, you know, my first thought when I read that was Dave saying, "Oh, you know, that's a hot potato. I'm going to leave that back in the city, and I don't want to have Absalom chasing us down and wiping
Well,
us all out for it."
yeah, and it also could be that it's the sign of who really is the king. Whoever has
Yeah.
possession of the ark is the king of Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so he's just given up.
a pessimistic view is he's giving up.
Yeah.
Optimistic view is he's literally saying, if I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he'll bring me back.
Right.
Except me.
So let's talk about that, because that was what I remember now. I want to talk about at the very beginning here. Did you notice what David did not do when he heard this messenger?
Just talk to God. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he consult with God? Here's another thing. Did he ask for other stories? All he's hearing is from one messenger.
Right.
One
Right.
side of this issue. I mean, how many times I know in my life I've heard just one side of the story. Aha, I knew it. He's guilty, you know, or worse, for those who use Facebook. You read an article on Facebook and you react to it.
There you go.
Right? And you don't really
knew
listen
it.
to both sides. I knew it. See, I knew it. It's a confirmation bias. I knew that. And so you don't hear the whole story.
Right.
Okay. That is going on. I wonder why David didn't seek counsel here with it. Was it that guilt that that is in his life right now that prevents him from
For me, I just thought, like you're saying, the bias is that I knew it'd catch up with me. you
yeah
know?
yeah
And but you never know. This is only the
Right.
one writing.
it's always risky to add into a story,
Right, because he could have had his counsel. He could have
Right.
had.
Yeah.
This was just the tip of the iceberg. You may have heard about it,
right?
Right.
so it's hard to put too much into that. But I
Right.
can see your point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just I find it interesting. I mean, over the history of David, we always see that he always early on, he did seek God's counsel. And he didn't want to be king, right? I mean, he had many opportunities. People say, "You need to be king. Let's go and beat Saul up and
Right.
let's be king." And,
Yeah.
and he backs off, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't
He's got
take that
lax,
approach.
so he's got
Right.
more-
Yeah, I think so. He's gotten lax since he's gotten older, maybe. But
The other thing here too is in verse 16. So he takes, said the king, he takes his servants and he takes his household, and he went out in his household with him. But the king left behind 10 concubines to keep the house.
well, I giggled the first time I heard that. When I read that, I first giggled about
Right.
it. Sure, someone's got to keep the house clean.
Well,
But it's kind of interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're leaving,
Later on, the story
Yeah.
pick with that up. I think.
yeah. But it's almost like I'm leaving, but
I'll be back.
I'll be back,
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
So
Right.
That could be.
Could be. And the story has an interesting twist on those.
you're not going to give us a spoiler
Ooh,
alert.
that's down in there. We'll get into it.
but it's kind of like, I wonder if it was I'll be back, or if it was more of you never know. Kind of like this. The world's going to end in 12 years, but elect me and I'll serve for the next 30 years.
Right.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Which one do you want?
On the surface, obviously David just wanted the house to be kept clean while they're to
Yeah.
transition to power. So I don't know.
Yeah, just so Absalom have a neat foyer with fresh flowers.
Right, exactly. Welcome, it's a concierge service or something like that. Okay, and so we see this interesting thing about the people passing, and at first I thought it was just the David's court, if you will, his close people, but the numbers seem to add up quite a bit. I mean, 600 Gittites. I mean, that's a lot of folks to go with them, and all of these people here. And so the Gittite guy does a great phrase here about and how that can live. I mean, that can apply to our lives here. Wherever my Lord the King shall be, whether for death or for life, there also will be your servant. I mean, that's a great devotional
Who does
phrase.
that make you think of?
Yeah,
Ruth.
yeah, exactly. There's Ruth, the Old Testament there. We used the practical life of Paul and Peter, who, you know, in their lives, and the disciples, who, you know, chose to follow Christ. You know, they chose Christ to be their king. Is Christ our king? Would our king be like that? Would we follow death or life?
And in both Ruth and the Gittite's case, they weren't even part of the group.
That's right.
You know,
True.
They weren't even part of
The
nationality.
ancestors, right,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it's a phenomenal phrase. It really is, to go on with that. It's really amazing. Okay, believe it or not, we're going to stop here because